We are less than a month out from Earth Day, which is a special day here at TYT. And in fact, we will be having a special, as we always do. We're gonna be bringing in environmental activists and guests to join us and talk about the environment, the climate, what Biden is doing, what can possibly happen, all of that. But one of the things that might make this particular Earth Day a little bit more special is that the president has indicated that he plans to introduce a net zero strategy on Earth Day. And joining us now to talk about net zero, how you get there, the consequences of all of this, and the political conversation going on around it, is a net zero policy engagement fellow at the University of Oxford. Kaya Axelsson joins us now. Kaya, welcome to the show.
Hi, John. Thanks so much for having me.
Very glad to have you here. Interestingly, as we go live with this, you're actually in the process of watching a hearing that's going on right now, which bears on this conversation. So tell me a little bit about the conversation around net zero, what's likely to happen politically.
Absolutely. So what is so exciting to me about the hearing that we could be watching right now as this is being filmed, it's a hearing on the US setting a net zero target. So we have committed to re-enter the Paris Agreement because the Biden administration has made that a top priority. But it would be really great if the legislature could also get on board behind a net zero target. So the Clean Futures Act is doing that, is making that commitment. And not only does it kind of commit us to a net zero target by 2050, but it also commits us to a 50% emissions reduction target by 2030, which would be major, and it would put us on track to meet the Paris Agreement target to limit warming to 1.5 degrees.
And there's been a lot of different plans generally to combat climate change, specifically having to do with when we should be hitting these different thresholds. I don't know how many points we want to have on that spectrum, but generally speaking, how aggressive would you consider this plan?
This plan is not aggressive. This plan is just based on the best available science, the IPCC report, which tends to be a bit conservative because that's scientists around the world coming together to agree. And so what we are actually seeing in this plan is a very kind of moderate response. It's in line with global best practice, right? You've got over 60% of the world now signed up to a net zero target by 2050. That's the bare minimum that we could do. If we want to lead, we should go sooner than that.
Okay, and of course having the goals and the targets is important, but there's always a question of, so how do we make sure that we're actually going to meet that? And if we don't, what are the consequences? In that area, what is the enforcement and oversight like on this bill?
So the bill has several sort of regulatory measures, and that's particularly what Republicans are pushing back on. A few Republicans on the committee have said, on the House committee have said that they feel this is a rush to green. And that's probably because they've got some donors in the fossil fuel industry who don't like the sound of regulation. Overall, however, the bill does not necessarily put out very strict kind of reporting mechanisms. And so I think that that's something that we can expect to see in the strategy that Biden outlines on Earth Day. We're gonna see, so there's the legislature and there's what they can do in terms of the budget and how this bill, the Clean Futures Act, incentivizes new renewable energy and new clean jobs. But then there's also the incredible leverage point that the Biden administration has just with the federal government as fingertips in terms of what we can do in terms of spending on EVs. EVs alone could create 1.5 million jobs, and just the federal government alone could bring 640,000 new cars into an electric vehicle fleet. Procurement for the federal government, you're looking at 500 billion. That's bigger than the economy of Sweden. And so if all of the procurement that's going around just in the federal government, we're not even talking about getting into sort of regulating other people, other companies, or other subnational governments. We're talking about the federal government just using its purchasing power for green means. That's gonna be a huge leverage point. So I'm hoping to see some of that in Biden's strategy.
I'm glad that you brought this up though, because I'm curious. Something like this seems like it'd be quite natural, common sense. So it's probably gonna be quite divisive in the legislature. So you've indicated some things having to do sort of wholly with the way the US government runs itself, vehicles and things like that. Are there any other areas where, in theory, if this were to be filibustered, or if they try to do it during the budget and theoretically could do it via reconciliation, but let's say some Democratic senators won't sign on to certain parts of this. If it was just Biden, what can Biden do via executive orders or actions that might get us towards some of this?
Yeah, so I like to cite other people's work. We have some ideas that we've outlined in a report that we've done at Oxford around how we could level up subnational action. But first, I want to talk about Professor Leah Stokes and Sam Ricketts have recently put out a report. Leah Stokes is kind of the queen of utility research, and she believes, and I believe as well, that a clean energy standard for the US is the single most important policy that we can pass. So if the Biden administration could just act alone with its democratically elected and democratic fellows, let's be clear that that's the majority of America speaking there, then we could have a clean energy standard, and then that could completely shift our grid, and that's the first step.
And I'm thinking now that perhaps I should have led with this, but there's a lot. Obviously, we think about it in terms of what's Biden going to do, what's the Senate going to do, how's it going to affect industry, all of that. For regular people in the US who might be watching this, in the next 2 years, or the next 10 years, the next 30 years, if this is the path we go down, what are some ways that might influence their lives?
It's really good. The news is really good on this point. So the Sierra Club has just put out a report called the Thrive Report that looks at the kind of job creation. I mean, let's be serious here. We're down 14 million jobs. And if we look at the green economy that's kind of already on track, the green economy has created 9.5 million jobs. And that's an outdated study, that's 2019. So I think that we could reasonably gain back all of those 14 million jobs by creating new infrastructure projects that put us on track to a green future. A couple of those examples are, we need to modernize our grid. So those are long-term projects. And what I think often gets missed in this debate, the numbers are often compared to fossil fuel industry-based jobs. But those jobs are often very short term. So you're basically comparing long-term infrastructure jobs, manufacturing jobs like electric vehicles. We could double the manufacturing industry in Detroit with electric vehicle industry improvements. But what is often that's often compared against fossil fuel jobs that go away in a year. Maybe they pay you $100,000. But they go away in a year, and that's just not a fair comparison. So green jobs are really better for long-term stability, and that's what people need right now. They're sick of instability right now.
Interesting. Well, as we pointed out, of course, the hearing is ongoing. We are in this less than a month-long march to Earth Day. So we're going to continue to talk about this here. But if there are people watching this that are interested in keeping up to date with this conversation, the path towards this actually becoming action, are there any sources that you would recommend for getting that information?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think you should just watch the hearing that's going on right now in the House. And I would encourage you, it's great to take in information. It's great to stay informed. Get involved. Email your legislator right now and tell them to pass the Clean Futures Act. Now, if you're asking me where you should watch, I run a site called netzeroclimate.org that helps you kind of keep track of the global progress to net zero. And we're in partnership with the UN Climate Change Race to Zero campaign. So what's so exciting about this year is that we have an opportunity at the Conference of Parties that brings together nations to negotiate on climate change. We have an opportunity to set new ambition. And we really think that this is going to be the year where nations come together. But that requires people to be paying attention. And one of the best ways you can pay attention is to look and see, has your company or your city set a strong net zero target in line with the global race to zero? Your company or your city could be ahead of the US in setting a net zero strategy. And in doing so could encourage the US to take a stand.
That's a great point. And to your point about getting involved, it might be easier to make that sort of more local action effective than, certainly push federally, but if you can get your city, you can get your state to do it, that would be helpful as well. Kaya, we really appreciate you taking time out of the hearings to join us and to break this down. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.